That's why you should never share your plans with anyone, not even your sister. You spilled everything again, Mayla, Liora shouted, holding the small empty gourd with a look of frustration. I'm sorry, sis. It slipped from my hand, Mayla replied in a low voice, rubbing her feet on the damp earth, her eyes shimmering with regret. It was the end of a hot morning in the village of Kondé, on the banks of the great Kama River. Liora and Mayla, two sisters very different from each other, were walking back home after fetching water. The red dirt road was still moist from the early morning rain, and the sun beat down on the treetops as if trying to squeeze out every drop of shade. The village moved at its usual pace. Children ran barefoot, women cooked in large pots outdoors, and the men tended to the crops or worked on fishing tools. Despite Liora's sharp tone, their bond was clear. Since they were little, they had been inseparable. They slept on the same mat, helped their mother with chores, and were seen as an example of sisterhood in the village. Liora was the eldest, practical and quick-witted. She always found fast solutions to problems at home, knew how to bargain with merchants, and handled everything with a cleverness that inspired respect. Mayla, on the other hand, was more reserved, charming, with a calm heart and a smile that seemed to light up everything around her. People said she carried a sweetness that could soothe even the most stubborn children. In the village of Kondé, the days passed slowly. The sisters grew up together, shaped by the stories told around the fire and by their mother's teachings, who always said, "Girls, the world is wide, but evil can live right next door. Take care of each other." Liora took that seriously. She believed it was her role to protect her sister, to guide her, to make decisions, until the day of the festival. The Wind Festival always arrived with drums and color, one of the biggest events of the year. It was when the people of Kondé celebrated the good harvests, danced under the full moon, and offered gifts to the Kama River in gratitude. The village filled with people from neighboring communities, and everyone wore their finest clothes and adornments. It was tradition for unmarried girls to dance in the great circle in the square to honor the ancestors. "Are you going to dance, Mayla?" Liora asked that day, her voice hiding concern. "Just a little. Nothing big. It's just a dance, sis," Mayla replied, adjusting the beads in her hair. But it wasn't just a dance. When Mayla stepped into the circle, all eyes turned to her. Her movements were gentle, like the wind carrying flower pollen, and her smile drew smiles in return. In the middle of the crowd, watching quietly, was the young King Kenu. King of Kondé since a very young age, Kenu was admired for his fairness, and for eyes that always seemed to know more than they let on. It wasn't common for him to attend the festival, but that year he had decided to step outside the palace walls and be among his people. And it was there, amid the drums and swirling ribbons, that he saw Mayla for the first time. Liora noticed the king's gaze, and her heart tightened. She pretended not to care, but kept her eyes on Kenu the entire celebration. And when he stood up and walked over to the girl's mother, everyone knew what was about to happen. "Madam, your daughter has a pure spirit and a radiant presence. I wish to ask for her hand in marriage with your blessing," said the king, his voice calm and firm. Liora clenched her fists. She smiled on the outside, but inside she felt a deep pain. In the days that followed, the village was filled with joy. Women danced, elders gathered to bless the union, and Mayla began visiting the palace to learn royal traditions. She always came back with wonder in her eyes. "You're not going to believe the palace garden, sis. It's full of flowers that change color throughout the day. And the books, Liora, there are so many books there." Liora smiled, but every word from her sister was like a knife twisting inside her. On the day of the wedding, the village came to a halt. Mayla wore a golden tunic with hand-embroidered details, and her head was wrapped in a fine blue cloth, a symbol of purity and royalty. Liora helped her get ready, braiding her sister's hair in silence. "You look beautiful," she said, forcing a smile. "Thank you, sis. I wouldn't have made it here without you," Mayla replied, gently holding her sister's hands. But deep down, Liora felt forgotten, as if everything they had built together had been erased by Mayla's beauty and sweetness. And worse, she had lost her sister to a world that didn't belong to her. As the weeks passed, Mayla's presence as queen enchanted everyone. The people felt welcomed by her kindness and warmth. King Kenu seemed genuinely happy. The two walked hand in hand through the gardens, laughed together at banquets, and attended ceremonies side by side. Liora watched it all from afar, sometimes from the doorway of her house, other times mingled among the villagers. She told herself she was happy for her sister, but envy began to take hold. In the silence of the nights, Liora would go over everything that had happened, the dances, the marriage proposal, the new title of queen. And with that, a thought began to form. At first, it was just a whisper in the back of her mind. Then it became a constant murmur. What if she wasn't here anymore? What if I were the queen? And even when she tried to push the thought away, it came back. Stronger, clearer, more possible. Dry leaves cracked beneath Liora's feet as she walked along the dark trail that led into the dense forest. Dawn had not fully broken yet. A low mist drifted through the twisted branches and shrubs, and the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and old moss. She carried a cloth tied over her shoulder, holding a small gourd of water, a piece of bread, and 3 old coins inherited from her grandmother. She didn't know if that would be enough, but it didn't matter. She was willing to pay any price. The forest of Obakan, known for harboring secrets that even the oldest hunters dared not speak of, was avoided by all. It was said that Anzala lived there, a woman as old as the river stones, with eyes that could see beyond time. Liora had heard the stories. Women went there seeking fertility, men chasing revenge, mothers wishing for wealth for their children, and almost always, they came back changed. Some never came back at all. But Liora didn't hesitate. Ever since Mayla had become queen, the bitterness in her chest had only grown. Her sister still invited her to the palace, trying to keep the bond they once shared, but Liora always declined, saying she was too busy with chores. The truth was she couldn't bear it anymore. The glow in Mayla's eyes, the fine clothes, the guards bowing, the crowds calling her our queen. And worst of all, Kenu's gaze, once distant and admired, now reserved only for her sister. It was during one of those nights, crying alone, that she decided something had to be done. She could no longer live in Mayla's shadow. If the world bowed to Mayla, Liora would make the world forget she ever existed. The trees grew denser, and the sounds of the village were swallowed by the thick silence of the forest. Liora walked for hours until she finally saw the small hut, made of dry branches and thick leaves. Dark smoke rose through a hole in the roof. A bitter smell lingered in the air. She stopped at the door. For a moment she thought about turning back, but she'd come too far. "Come in, Liora." The voice came from inside, hoarse and sharp as a blade of grass. With her heart pounding, she pushed aside the straw curtain and stepped in. The room was dark, lit only by the flickering blue flame in a clay bowl. Anzala sat on the floor, slowly stirring a cauldron filled with thick green liquid. "How do you know my name?" Liora asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know what rides the wind and what dwells in the hearts of fools," the old woman said, smiling, her teeth darkened and her gums grey. "And your heart has been screaming for a long time." Liora hesitated, then knelt on the dirt floor. "I want my sister to disappear. I want the people to forget her. I want the king to see only me." Anzala stopped stirring the pot. She rose slowly and walked over to a shelf lined with colourful bottles, bones and feathers. She picked up a small glass vial filled with a bubbling greenish liquid. A dark request. She turned to Liora, her eyes wide. "Are you willing to pay the price?" "Any price," Liora replied without hesitation. "Then listen carefully." Anzala held out the vial. "Give this to her, in a drink or in food. Once she swallows it, she will turn into a golden fish, small and harmless. No voice, no human form. To the people, it will be as if she vanished. No one will know the truth." Liora reached for the vial, but before taking it, she asked, "Forever? Will she stay that way forever?" Anzala smiled. "If no eyes that recognize her ever see her again, yes, forever." Liora took the vial with trembling hands. A chill ran down her spine, but she ignored it. "Thank you," she said, rising to her feet. "Don't thank me yet," Anzala replied, turning back to her cauldron. Darkness collects its own debts. The walk back to the village was quicker. Leora's heart raced, not with fear but with anticipation. The vial seemed to radiate heat inside the cloth as if the liquid was still alive. In the days that followed, she waited for the right moment. And it came on a cloudy afternoon, when Mayla showed up at her door with a sweet smile and longing eyes. "Sis, you haven't come to see me. I've missed you so much." Liora forced a smile, swallowing her anger. "I made something special for you today. A drink, like the ones Grandma used to make when we were sad. It'll give you strength and joy." "Oh, I miss Grandma," Mayla smiled. "I'd love that." Without the slightest suspicion, Mayla took the cup and drank it eagerly. The effect was immediate. She clutched her throat, choking. Her eyes widened. In seconds, her arms vanished, her body shrank, and golden scales began to cover her. Her mouth disappeared, replaced by a small, rounded snout. In front of Liora, where her sister once stood, there was now only a small golden fish, its shimmering scales and moist eyes seeming to plead. Liora stepped closer, gently picked up the fish, and placed it into a gourd filled with water. She walked in silence to the Kima River. The wind blew softly and the leaves danced in spirals, as if they knew what was happening. "Goodbye, Mayla," she whispered, casting the fish into the water. The river carried the tiny golden body gently, disappearing between the rocks and submerged branches. Liora stood there for a few minutes, breathing deeply. Her chest felt light, as if she had thrown away the weight that had consumed her for so long. She turned and walked back, her steps steady. Now the place of queen would be hers. The throne, the people, the king. Everything would be hers. And no one would ever know. The sun was beginning to set behind the hills when Liora climbed the palace steps for the first time. Dressed in a light cotton-dyed fabric, her feet in worn leather sandals, and her hair tied back with golden beads that once belonged to her sister. The guards recognized her, parted ways, and she walked through the gates with her head held high and chest lifted, as if she were already queen. Inside, the atmosphere was somber. Since Mayla's sudden disappearance, the joy that once filled the halls had vanished. The servants walked in silence, the musicians no longer played, and the king sank deeper into his grief. Liora was met with lukewarm embraces and forced smiles. The people respected her as the sister of the missing queen. She began visiting the palace regularly, offering comfort to the king, preparing calming teas, and speaking sweet words, all while carrying her sister's image in the people's memory. "Kenu, you need to eat," she would say softly. "The kingdom still depends on your strength." The king, his eyes dull and shoulders slumped, would simply nod. For days, weeks, he said little. He searched for Mayla everywhere. He sent riders to distant villages, consulted elders, even offered a reward for information. Nothing. Mayla had vanished like morning mist. Liora waited patiently. The king's sorrow was her opportunity, and even though she didn't yet have his love, she was now by his side, earning his trust, filling the space that once belonged to Mayla. But as time passed, the king remained unreachable. Kind, yes, respectful, but his gaze wandered through memories that didn't include Liora. He didn't look at her the way he looked at Mayla. He never spoke her name softly, never took her hand in his. One night, sitting with him in the palace garden under the faint glow of oil lamps, Liora tried once more to find a way into his heart. "Kenu," she said, lightly touching his hand, "I know how much you're hurting, but the village needs you. The people are restless. They need to see you strong, standing tall again. You must go on. I can help you do that." He turned his face slowly, his eyes fixed on the darkness of the sky. "Mayla was my light," he said, voice heavy with sorrow. "Without her, everything has lost its color." Liora took a deep breath, but her patience was wearing thin. No matter what she did, nothing seemed enough to erase Mayla's shadow from the king's heart. She might have been wearing her sister's necklaces, lying on the same royal rugs, eating from the same carved wooden bowl. But in Kenu's eyes, she was still just Liora, the sister of the woman he loved. The following nights were filled with silence. Liora spent hours staring at the ceiling of her room in the palace, listening to the wind hitting the windows. Her plan felt incomplete. Yes, she had removed Mayla from the path, but she hadn't claimed the throne completely. She was not queen yet, she was not loved yet, and it was eating her alive. That's when she remembered Anzala, the old woman of the forest. If that woman had been able to turn Mayla into a fish with a single potion, surely she could make the king fall in love. After all, if Liora couldn't win Kenu's heart with kindness and devotion, she would take it with magic. Before the next sunrise, she slipped out of the palace unnoticed. Wrapped in a thick shawl, wearing her worn sandals, she took the path back to the forest of Obakan. This time the trail felt darker. The branches hung lower. The owls followed her with their eyes. When she reached the hut, she found the old woman sitting outside, grinding leaves in a stone mortar. "Back so soon, daughter of envy," Anzala said without looking up. "I need your help again," Liora replied, steady. "I warned you, wishing someone away is no small thing." Anzala raised her head, her eyes deep like wells. "And now you want more?" "The king," Liora began, "he still thinks of her. I want him to love me, to see me, to desire me the way he did Mayla." The old woman let out a rough laugh. "Love isn't something you steal without leaving scars. Are you willing to pay the price?" "Any price," Liora answered quickly. "Even if you can never bear children?" Liora went pale. "What? If you want the king's love, you must give something of equal value. Love without roots is a flower that doesn't last. Your womb will be the payment." Liora hesitated. For a moment, she imagined a child in her arms, the smell of milk and the laughter of a baby running through the garden. She had always wanted to be a mother, always dreamed of teaching old songs, braiding hair, telling stories. But that dream now seemed distant. "I agree," she said, after a sharp silence. "I'll do whatever it takes." Anzala smiled, satisfied. She returned inside the hut and began to prepare the mixture. Dried leaves, red powder, drops of some dark, thick liquid. After a few minutes, she handed Liora a small vial filled with ruby-red liquid. "Mix this into the king's food. When he eats, the enchantment will begin. He'll see you the way he sees the memory of the other. He'll feel for you what he now feels for the one who swims the rivers." "And afterward?" Liora asked. "Afterward," the old woman replied, threading her bony fingers through her hair. "You'll live with everything you asked for and everything you gave up." That same day, Liora returned to the palace and asked the head servant for permission to prepare the king's dinner. "I want to do something special. He's been so down," she said sweetly. The cook, trusting in her closeness to the king, agreed. Liora entered the kitchen, lit the fire, and made a stew of fish and karuru leaves. Before serving, she carefully poured in the contents of the magic vial, stirring until it dissolved completely. In the banquet hall, Kenu sat as usual, still downcast. Liora placed the bowl in front of him. "For you, my king. I made it with my own hands. May it bring you peace." Kenu ate in silence. With each spoonful, the light in his eyes shifted. When he finished, he looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Liora," he said, smiling, "you've been by my side all this time. I hadn't realized how grateful I am for that." She lowered her eyes, pretending to be humble, but inside her chest roared with joy. "I'll always be here," she replied. Days later, the announcement was made. The king would take Liora as his wife. The people murmured in shock. Many exchanged uneasy glances. Mayla hadn't been gone for that long. Was it right to wed her sister so soon? But no one dared question the king, and so Liora finally became queen. She received the title, the dresses, the jewelry, the vows. But even with all of that, a shadow followed her. She might have the throne, the palace, the stairs. But in her dreams, she heard the sound of running water and saw golden eyes watching her. Silent. Alive. The sound of wet clay squishing beneath Talina's bare feet echoed along the banks of the Kima River as she crouched to fill her old clay gourd with the morning's clear water. The sun had yet to rise above the treetops, but the woman was already sweating from the effort of balancing the heavy jar on her head. Behind her, the forest was still asleep. A bird call here and there signaled the waking of the day. Talina whispered soft prayers as she gathered the water. "River God, grant me some relief, any blessing, anything to ease this hard life." Widowed at a young age, Talina was raising her daughter Rani alone, a girl with bright eyes and a curious heart. Hunger, debt, and fatigue followed her like shadows. She didn't ask for riches, just enough so Rani wouldn't fall asleep with an empty belly. When she returned to her small clay hut on the edge of the village of Lintaba, Talina placed the gourd on the wooden bench of the porch and prepared to pour the water into a larger clay pot. But the moment she tilted the gourd, a golden glimmer flashed before her eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered, her mouth ajar. Sliding from the edge of the jar was a small golden fish, alive, which dropped gently into the basin and began to swim in slow circles. Its scales shimmered as if forged from pure gold. Talina took a step back, unable to believe what she was seeing. This isn't just any fish." She stepped closer, bent down slowly, and observed it closely. The creature was calm. Its eyes glowed in a strange way, almost human. In that moment, a memory surfaced, an old legend told by the elders, a rare golden fish said to appear only once every 10 years, its value beyond imagining. Many searched for it. Few believed it truly existed. "If I sell this fish," Talina said aloud, "my daughter will never go hungry again. We could have our own home, a field, food every day." The door creaked. Rani came in carrying firewood in her arms, smiling. "Mom, what is it? Why do you look like that?" Talina didn't answer. She simply pointed to the fish swimming in the basin. The girl dropped the wood with a soft thud and ran to her mother's side. Is it the fish from the story? The one that shines like the sun?" "It's him, sweetheart," Talina said, almost in tears. "The golden fish." "Are we going to be rich?" Rani asked, eyes wide. Talina nodded slowly. "Yes, my love. Tomorrow I'll take him to the market. The merchants will fight over this fish. We'll never want for anything again." But that night Rani couldn't sleep. She lay restless, listening to the sounds of the forest and the soft hiss of wind slipping through the cracks in the hut. The image of the fish wouldn't leave her mind. So strange, so calm. And those eyes. She got up quietly and walked to the basin where the fish was. Kneeling in front of it, she watched in silence. "You're so beautiful," she whispered. "It's like you understand me." The fish swam in slow circles. Then it stopped and looked directly at her. She furrowed her brow. Something stirred inside her, a chill, as if a secret were about to be revealed. "If you're not just a fish, tell me. Give me a sign," she whispered, leaning closer. At that very moment, the water in the basin rippled slightly, though there was no wind. The fish rose to the surface, and its shimmering scales glowed brighter for a moment. Rani's eyes widened, and she felt something, not with her ears, but with her heart. A soft voice echoed inside her. "Help me." "Who are you?" Rani swallowed hard. "What's happening?" "My name is Mayla. I was cursed by someone I loved like a sister. I need your help." The girl backed away, startled. She could feel the voice vibrating inside her, as if the fish's soul was trying to reach her from another realm. She glanced around to make sure her mother wasn't near. Everything was still. "You were human?" "Yes, and I still am. Inside. If I'm sold, I can never come back." Rani stayed on her knees, trembling. She gently touched the rim of the basin. "How can I help you?" "I don't know yet, but please, don't give me away. Don't tell your mother, at least not yet." The door creaked. Talina stirred in her room. Rani quickly blew out the oil lamp and rushed back to her mat, her heart racing. The next morning, the air in the house felt different. Talina was more cheerful than she'd been in months. She put on her best headscarf, wrapped the fish in a clay bowl covered with a cloth, and said, "Rani, today's our day. We're going to the market. Our future begins now." "Mom," Rani hesitated. "Are you sure we should sell him?" "Of course, my girl. That fish is our chance. No more scraps for us." Rani bit her lip, uneasy. She couldn't tell the truth, not yet. Her mother wouldn't believe her. But inside, Mayla's plea echoed like a drum. "Don't give me away." The village streets were packed when Talina and Rani reached the market. Voices buzzed, blending with the merchants' calls. Vendors displayed cloth, fruit, dried meat. But when Talina lifted the cloth covering the fish, the entire market fell silent. "It's the golden fish," someone shouted. "It's real," said another. Merchants rushed to the woman, tugging at her clothes, offering sacks of coins, promises of homes, cattle, land. 50 gold coins! 60! 70! The crowd pressed in, eyes gleaming with greed. Talina could barely speak from the excitement. She had never dreamed of such offers. Rani, however, felt like she was in a nightmare. She tugged at her mother's sleeve, trying to pull her away from the noise. "Mom, we can't sell it. Not yet." "What?" Talina turned, frowning. "Mom, that fish, it's a person, a woman. She was cursed. She spoke to me last night." The shouting died for a moment. All eyes turned to Rani. "You're saying it's a magic fish?" One merchant scoffed. "The girl's making things up, kids and their wild imagination." But Talina looked at her daughter, and in her eyes she saw something she had never seen before. Certainty. Conviction. This wasn't stubbornness. It wasn't fantasy. "Rani, are you sure?" "I'm sure, Mom. If we sell her, it's like selling a life." Silence spread again. The eager faces around them turned to masks of doubt and judgment. Talina looked at the fish, and for the first time, she felt it too. The fish's eyes seemed to plead. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and announced firmly, "I'm not selling." The market erupted in protest. "You're insane! Throwing away a fortune! You'll regret this!" But Talina said nothing. She picked up the bowl, grabbed her daughter's hand, and hurried away. The angry voices followed, but none were louder than the decision she had made. They had something more valuable than gold, a life in their hands. And now they knew that Mayla's fate was tied to their own. Night fell over Lintaba with unusual swiftness. The sky, once streaked with orange, was now covered in dark clouds that smothered even the light of the moon. Talina slammed the window shut and placed the bowl with the golden fish on the wooden table. Rani, sitting beside her, clutched the edge of the basin as if protecting Mayla were her only purpose in the world. "We have to think, Mom. They're coming back," the girl said, her face pale. "I know, sweetheart. Those men won't give up so easily," Talina said, pressing her lips tight. "Once someone sees gold with their own eyes, they never forget the shine." They had left the market under a storm of insults. 3 merchants in particular had been furious about being turned down. One of them, with a narrow face and eyes hard as stone, had even shouted that Talina was making the biggest mistake of her life. Talina knew their kind well, men used to getting what they wanted through money or threats. Rani peeked through the crack in the window and saw the outline of 2 figures moving near the fence. "Mom, they're here!" Talina jumped to her feet, grabbed Rani's hand, and ran to the back of the house. She picked up a half-packed bundle, filled with old clothes, a bit of cornmeal, and a few thin blankets. She carefully placed the fish inside a deep gourd filled with water, covered it with cloth, and tied it tight. "We're leaving now, before they get inside. Just take what you need." Rani rushed to the bedroom and came back with a small rag doll and her grandmother's old oil lamp. She didn't say a word. Fear sat deep in both their chests. They slipped out the back of the house, stepping lightly on the wet earth to stay silent. In the distance, muffled voices and approaching footsteps could be heard. They escaped through a hidden path between the banana trees, guided by the flickering glow of the lamp. The destination was uncertain, but the plan was clear: disappear into the forest until it was safe again. They walked for hours, pushing past thick roots, thorny branches, and exhaustion. The jungle was dense, and the nighttime sounds, crickets, owls, snapping twigs, created a tense soundtrack. When their feet were burning and the sky threatened rain, they found a small, abandoned wooden hut, partially covered in moss. The boards were worn, but the roof held firm. "Here," Talina said, breathless. "We'll spend the night here." They went inside and pushed an old bench against the door. They spread the blankets on the floor and sat side by side, their breathing heavy. Rani placed the gourd with the fish next to her. The water inside glowed softly in the light of the lamp. She leaned in and whispered, "Mayla, we're safe for now. But what do we do next? How can I help you?" A cold wind blew through a crack in the wall. The lamp's flame flickered. Then suddenly the air inside the hut thickened, heavy. Talina gripped her daughter tightly. A figure appeared at the entrance, a woman, elderly, with hair white as cotton, wrapped in a silver cloak. There was no door opening, no sound of footsteps. She simply appeared. "Don't be afraid," she said, her voice calm. "I was sent by the gods of this land. I heard your prayers, felt the weight in your hearts, and more importantly, I know who you carry." Rani dropped to her knees, speechless. Talina, body tense, could only nod. "You're a priestess?" Talina asked, her voice hoarse. "I am a messenger of the ancients, guardian of the balance between light and shadow," she replied. "The woman you protect is more than a victim. She is a piece of a destiny that must be restored." The old woman approached the gourd, looked into it, and slowly nodded. "Her soul still shines. There's still time, but very little." Rani stood up, anxious. "Can you bring her back? Can you break the curse?" The woman pulled from a small leather pouch a bundle of green leaves that seemed to pulse with light. She held them near the fish, and the golden glow immediately brightened. "This plant grows only where truth reigns," she said. "Rub these leaves over the fish's body. It will begin the process of return." "That's all?" Talina asked. "No, that will only open the door. To cross it, the king, and only he, must look into her eyes within 7 days. If he doesn't, she'll remain like this forever." Rani covered her mouth with her hands. "But the king is in Kondé. We don't even know how to get there. How will we get inside the palace?" The woman looked at them with resolve. "Paths do not open for timid hearts, but fate favors those who move with courage. I will show you the way back to the village. Through the forest to the east, you will reach Kondé before sunset on the 3rd day. But beware, the eyes of darkness still follow you. Remember 7 days. She placed the leaves in Rani's hands, touched her shoulder gently, and vanished like smoke in the air. The two of them stayed there a moment, in silence. The lamp flickered. Talina held her daughter's hands tightly. "We're doing this, Rani, for her, for us." At dawn, they set off toward Kondé, following the path they'd been shown. For 3 days, they walked muddy trails, slept in hidden clearings, and fed themselves on wild fruit. Wherever they passed, the world seemed to hold its breath, as if nature, too, understood the urgency of what they carried. When the 3rd day ended, they stood atop a hill. In front of them, the village of Kondé revealed itself in all its majesty. Stone walls, colorful flags, the great ochre palace rising at its center. Rani held the gourd as if it were part of her body. The fish swam slowly, but its glow was stronger. They had arrived. "Now we just have to make the king see," Rani whispered. "That's all." But Talina knew that would be the hardest part, getting into the palace, speaking to the king, and convincing someone, anyone, that the fish in a peasant girl's hands was in truth the lost queen of Kondé. The gates of Kondé towered before Talina and Rani like impenetrable walls. Armed guards watched the entrance with sharp eyes and raised spears, as if they knew every visitor carried hidden intentions. At the center of the village, the palace stood gleaming under the afternoon sun, with its red stone columns and polished clay rooftops. Talina took a deep breath, adjusted the cloth covering the gourd in her arms, and stepped forward. "Be strong, Rani," she whispered. "We've come this far. We're not turning back now." Her daughter nodded silently, hands cold, heart racing. As they approached the gates, one of the guards raised his hand. "Stop right there. What's the reason for your visit?" Talina bowed respectfully. "Please, sir. We've come from far away. It's urgent. We must speak with the king." The guard let out a dry laugh. "Everyone who comes here says the same thing. The king is busy. No one gets in without the queen's permission." Rani clutched her mother's arm. "Please," Talina insisted. "It's about the former queen, Mayla." The guard's face turned serious. "The missing queen. What do you know about her?" Before Talina could answer, the man turned and signaled to another guard. After a brief exchange, they decided to escort the two visitors inside, but not to the king. First, they would have to explain themselves to the new queen, Liora. Liora sat on her throne, bare feet resting on a linen cushion, her nails painted red, eyes half-lidded. Though she wore luxurious garments and was surrounded by handmaidens and musicians, her expression was tense. Since taking the throne beside the king, the weight of the villagers' mistrust and the whispers in the halls had never left her. When she was informed that two women had arrived with an urgent request, she raised an eyebrow. "Let them in. Let's see what kind of nonsense they bring." The doors opened. Talina and Rani were led into the throne room. At the sight of Liora, both women felt a chill. There was something in the woman's posture, in her hard gaze, that chilled them to the bone. "Who are you?" Liora asked coldly. "I am Talina, and this is my daughter Rani. We've come from Lintaba. We've brought something the king needs to see. The king sees no one without my permission. If you have something to say it to me." Talina hesitated, then chose to be direct. "What we carry can only be shown to the king. It's about Mayla, the true queen." The room fell silent. Liora straightened in her throne, eyes flashing with restrained fury. "You dare speak her name in this hall?" Her voice rose. "That woman is gone. She is dead. I am queen now." "With all due respect, Your Majesty," Talina said, struggling to stay calm, "Mayla is alive. She was transformed. She's with us, and the king must see her with his own eyes." Liora rose violently. The servants stepped back in fear. "Guards, remove these two immediately. If they return with more lies, imprison them." Two guards grabbed Talina and Rani by the arms. "Wait," Rani cried. "It's true. Mayla is here. She's alive." But her shouts were ignored. They were dragged back to the gates and thrown out under cold, expressionless stares. Outside, they sat on the stone curb, breathless and shaken. "Mom, she knows," Rani whispered, eyes welling with tears. "She's afraid. That's why she wouldn't let us speak to the king." Talina pressed her lips together. Her daughter was right. There was something dark in that woman's eyes, a hidden fear, as if she knew a truth was about to rise. As they rested under a nearby tree, a group of villagers passed by, speaking in hushed tones. Talina and Rani listened closely. "She made the former queen's parents scrub the palace courtyard yesterday, and today she had them serve in the kitchen. It's humiliating. Liora's gone too far. The king sees nothing, like he's blind. He was never like this. Magic, some say." Rani turned to her mother, eyes wide. "Mom, they know. The people feel something's wrong. If we can find Mayla's parents, maybe they can help us." Asking discreetly around the village, they found the house of Mayla's family, a simple but dignified home with a small herb garden. They knocked. An older woman, her face tired and eyes anxious, answered. "Yes?" "Ma'am, we're friends of Mayla. We know what happened. She's alive. And we need your help." The woman turned pale. "What did you say? You know my daughter?" Her husband appeared behind her, brow furrowed. After a moment of confusion, they stepped aside and let Talina and Rani in. When they saw the golden fish in the gourd, emotion flooded the room. "It's her," the mother whispered. "I knew my mother's heart wasn't wrong." "She spoke to me," Rani explained, "said she was cursed, that the king must see her. If he looks into her eyes within 7 days, the curse will break." "But how can we bring her to him?" the father asked. "Liora doesn't let anyone near the king without going through her." Talina took a deep breath. There was one hope. "I've heard there's one person Liora trusts, the only man allowed into the palace without question, the palm wine carrier." The father's eyes lit up. "Yes, old Madhu. He's the only one Liora's never turned away. If we speak to him, maybe he could bring the fish in without her noticing." "Where does he live?" Rani asked, already standing. "On the hillside near the palm groves. We'll go with you." Later that afternoon, they went to Madhu's humble hut. They explained everything carefully. The old man listened in silence, eyes downcast, his grey beard woven into short braids. When they finished, he looked at the fish with an unreadable expression. I knew something was wrong from the day of the wedding. The king seemed hollow, soulless. Will you help us? Mayla's father asked. Madhu nodded. I will. But it's dangerous. If Liora finds out, she might have me killed. Or cut out my tongue. We'll protect you. The people are on your side, Talina said. The next morning before sunrise, Madhu hid the gourd with the golden fish inside his palm wine barrel. He walked to the palace gates as he did every week. The guards let him in without suspicion. He made his way to the hall where he knew the king would pass and waited. When Kenu appeared, walking slowly with a vacant gaze, Madhu knelt. Your Majesty, I brought something different today. The king stepped closer, curious. Madhu uncovered the gourd and revealed the golden fish. The moment Kenu's eyes met the fish's, a flash erupted. A wave of energy swept through the hall like wind on a stormy night. The fish glowed like 1,000 suns. Scales burst into the air like golden dust. In seconds, Mayla stood before him, alive, human, bathed in the light of morning. The king fell to his knees, eyes brimming with tears. Mayla, it's you. It's truly you. She walked to him, knelt and held his hands. I've returned, my king, returned to finish what was never meant to be broken. The spell had been broken, but what came next would be justice. The silence that fell over the palace after Mayla's return was unlike any other. It was the kind of silence that precedes a storm, heavy with unspoken meaning, surprised glances, and truths that had, until then, hidden behind veils of deceit. King Kenu remained kneeling before Mayla, his face wet with tears streaming freely. How did this happen? He whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. I thought you were dead. No, Kenu, Mayla replied, her voice as serene as the waters of the Kema on a calm morning. I've been alive this whole time. I was betrayed, transformed, and forgotten. But love doesn't dissolve so easily. It was love that brought me back. The king embraced her tightly, as if afraid she would vanish again. Behind them, old Madhu stood silently, watching the scene with tearful eyes. Who did this to you? The king asked as he rose with difficulty. Who had the courage to touch something so sacred? Mayla took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come. She looked at the king with steady eyes. It was Liora, my sister. Kenu turned pale. He stepped back, as if struck by an invisible blow. Liora? Mayla nodded slowly. She envied me. She wanted what was mine. And when she realized your love for me was real, she did the unthinkable. She sought magic. She turned me into a fish and cast me into the river. The king shut his eyes tightly. The memory of pain, of the search, of the sorrow that consumed him now mixed with outrage. He turned to the guards. Bring Liora, now. Search every room, every corridor. Bring her back alive. The soldiers ran through the palace, shouting orders and flinging doors open violently, but within minutes they returned, their expressions tense. Your Majesty, one of the guards said, head bowed, Liora is gone. She's not in her chambers, nor anywhere in the palace. What? The king roared. Search the entire village, send messengers, station guards on every road. No one helps this woman. Anyone caught hiding her will face the consequences. Outside in the damp darkness of the Obakan forest, Liora walked barefoot, eyes bloodshot, her face contorted with fury. Her once elegant dress was torn and stained with mud, her loose hair wild in the wind. She arrived at Anzala's cabin, out of breath, shoved aside the curtain with violence and entered like a shadow gone mad. They brought her back, she screamed. I need something stronger, a spell to destroy them all. Mayla, the king, the people who doubt me. I want them to kneel before me or die. The old crone looked at her with a grim expression. Sitting in her usual corner beside a bubbling cauldron, her eyes briefly glowed red. You've already crossed many lines, Liora, and now you stand at the last. Don't preach to me, give me what I want, she shouted, saliva trailing from her lips. Anzala stood slowly, walked to a shelf, and took down a small black pouch sewn with strands of hair and linen cloth. This is the final spell, a spell of destruction. It doesn't just kill, it erases, burns memories, topples thrones, tears homes apart. But there is one rule and one only. When you return to the palace, do not look back. No matter what you hear, keep going forward, or you will be the one consumed. Liora took the pouch with trembling hands. I understand. If you fail, the spell will turn on you with all its fury, said Anzala, a sadistic glint in her eyes, and there will be no salvation. Liora didn't reply. She left the cabin like a starving beast. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Mayla was reunited with her parents. The embrace was long and silent, broken only by quiet sobs. Rani and Talina watched the moment with tears in their eyes. The king approached the two and bowed with reverence. I'll never know how to thank you for all you've done. You gave up your safety, your peace, your days and nights to save someone you didn't even know. That will never be forgotten. We only did what was right, Your Majesty, Talina said humbly. Mayla didn't deserve that fate. And for that, you will have a new home here in Kondé, a house, land, and respect. Rani, he knelt to speak to the girl, you are brave. You were the first to hear Mayla. Your pure heart saved a queen. Hours later, the palace gates began to tremble. The sound of hurried footsteps, hysterical laughter, and incoherent screams approached the entrance. Make way! I'm the queen! Liora shouted. She appeared with tangled hair, eyes wild, her dress in rags. In her hands, the small black pouch of destruction. The guards hesitated, confused. Mayla stepped onto the palace balcony. Liora saw her. Her eyes lit up with hatred. You, traitor, you ruined everything. She began to run. But then, from somewhere behind her, came a soft voice, like a childhood lullaby. Liora, my beautiful sister, you can still come back. You can still be free. Liora froze. Her body stiffened. The words seemed to come from deep within, from the depths of her memory. She turned just slightly to see where the voice had come from. That was enough. The spell broke its seal. An invisible force burst from the black pouch. A dark wind swirled around Liora like a tornado of shadow. She screamed. Her eyes rolled back. She laughed, cried, screamed again. She dropped to her knees. I am the queen. I am... Her words turned into incoherent murmurs. Her mind shattered like dried clay. She bolted off in a zigzag, stumbling, laughing alone, screaming names that didn't exist. She crossed the palace gates, shoving aside anyone in her path. She ran down the road like a soul condemned. Then, a scream, a thud, and the sound of a body hitting the ground. A cart was coming down the main path. The driver tried to pull the reins, but it was too late. Liora's body lay still in the road. Villagers gathered silently. The king arrived soon after, Mayla at his side. He looked at his fallen sister without a word. This, said a woman among the murmurs, was the price of evil, of envy. Inside the palace, the air felt light for the first time in months. Candles were lit in honor of the ancestors. The people gathered in the square, singing and celebrating the return of the true queen. The king raised his hands and declared, "Justice has been done. Truth has prevailed. And now, we begin again. Stronger, more united." Mayla smiled, her eyes turned to the sky. Beside her, Talina, Rani, and her parents embraced one another. Kondé was finally at peace. Months had passed since the day justice swept over Kondé like rain washing the dirt from the earth after a long drought. The memory of Liora slowly faded into the palace kitchen's gossip, the elders' evening stories, and the whispers of the trees along the Kima River. But what remained was what had risen after her, the return of truth, peace, and hope. The palace, once veiled in sorrow, now bloomed with music, sweet aromas, and laughter that echoed through the walls and reached the surrounding fields. Mayla, once again queen, walked the halls with a calm and steady presence. Her voice was heard in councils, her opinion respected by the elders, and her compassion felt by every resident of Kondé. Talina and Rani, now living in a spacious home on the northern edge of the village, with varnished wooden windows and a growing orchard in the yard, enjoyed a life that once seemed impossible. The small clay hut where they once shared the silence of hunger had been replaced by a home filled with flowers, animals, and abundance. The land gifted by the king flourished, and Talina employed other widows from the village, ensuring no woman would ever again have to bow before poverty. Rani attended the palace school. She learned about herbs, stars, maps, and ancient tales, and more than anything, she remained a close friend to Mayla, as if their fates had been intertwined from the start by the hands of the gods. One golden evening, the temple bells rang out across Kondé. The birds fell silent. Women paused their work. Men dropped their hoes. Children stopped running. King Kenu, eyes gleaming with emotion, stepped onto the palace's central balcony and announced, "The time of darkness has passed. Our queen, Mayla, now carries the seed of hope. She is expecting children." The crowd erupted in applause, songs, and prayers, the square filled with offerings, baskets of fruit, colorful cloth, chickens, beaded necklaces. It was more than joy, it was redemption. Mayla, her hand resting on her belly, watched it all with tear-filled eyes. In the crowd, Talina and Rani smiled. The girl squeezed her mother's hand, proud. "We were part of this, weren't we?" Rani whispered. "We were, sweetheart, and we must never forget it," Talina replied, her voice tight with emotion. Time passed. Mayla's belly grew, and the palace was prepared for the arrival of the next generation. The elders said they were children of light, sent to strengthen the bond between the living and the ancestors. On the morning of their birth, distant thunder rumbled, a blessing from the heavens. The whole village kept vigil. The most skilled midwives were called, incense burned, ancient songs were sung. When the sun rose, bringing with it the cool breeze of dawn, a new sound echoed through the palace. The cries of two boys, twins. The king wept, Mayla laughed through her tears, and the servants danced through the corridors as if the entire world had been reborn in that moment. They were baptized right there before the altar of the ancestors, with the names Elomu and Tarek, meaning, respectively, the one who came from light, and he who brings justice. Years passed. Kondé became an even more prosperous kingdom. The story of Mayla and Liora was woven into fabrics, sung during festivals, and whispered during girls' rites of passage, not as a simple fable, but as a lasting warning. The Kama River continued its calm flow, carrying and returning the memories of a time when envy almost triumphed. But the brilliance of truth, like the gold in a certain fish's scales, never stops reflecting the light of the sun. Rani grew into a guardian of wisdom, alongside Mayla's sons, and Talina, though slower and with silver in her hair, still walked the fields with her head held high, remembering every day what she had done and what she had chosen not to do. On the final night of the rainy season, during a festival by the river, Mayla stepped onto the central stage with a white flower in hand. The people fell silent. "I've learned, through pain, that not all blood ties mean loyalty, but I've also learned that kindness can come from where you least expect it. Talina and Rani didn't just save me, they saved this entire kingdom. Let their names be remembered, let their children be blessed, and let no innocent heart ever again be silenced by envy." The people responded with applause, tears, and songs. The message was clear. It didn't matter what was lost or even what was sacrificed when one chose the right path, because in the end, there is always return, there is always rebirth. And now, with justice fulfilled, with the seeds of the next generation growing under the blessing of the people and the gods, Kondé was finally a home where all could live in the light of truth. And may it remain that way, forever.